as long as the Niners have Bobby Turner, their run game is going to be cool. They'll find a way to run the ball for about 5 yards a clip. But right now, they had the most, well, last year they had the most efficient passing game in the league. Purdy led the league in passing, passer rating. Now, 1 touchdown pass in 2 games, not nearly as efficient. Why do you think that is?
A lot of reasons. Number one, teams are playing man against the 49ers. They don't have man beaters on this team. 2,
schematically.
2,
yeah.
2, they're targeting Deebo Samuel way too much. They're forcing the ball to Deebo Samuel. And I don't know if that is Kyle telling him this is where it needs to go, or it's Brock because that's the only receiver he's played with in the preseason outside of Juwan. I don't know what the reason is, but Deebo's not open. And so they're forcing it to there. 3, the absence of Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is kind of like Steph Curry. When he's on the court, the defense focuses on him. When he's not, they're free to respect their man more. And so I think that's part of it as well. Outside of that, I don't know. Is Brock scared to take the check down now? Does he not want to take the check down anymore? Because there's check downs open and he's not taking them and he's getting sacked. So that all those things combined, that's also a rusty Brandon Ayuk. No preseason, no training camp for Brandon Ayuk. Those things combined is why, to me, it's struggling right now.
I think it's clear that Brock Purdy is not playing as well as last year. And the question is why? Like, you watch the film that Jesse put out there, it's damning. There are people open and he's hesitating. Like, that's not the Brock Purdy I know. You know who that looks like?
Jimmy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why does that keep happening to Kyle's quarterbacks? Over time. Like when Jimmy first came to the Niners, he was confident, he ad-libbed, he got worse and he became robotic and he lost his confidence. Like, that's what Brock looks like to me. He looks robotic. He's looking like he's standing there being like, Kyle told me to do this, or what did he tell me? Like, well, what about your instincts? Where are your playmaking instincts? You're not a guy who just stands still. Like, he did a Jimmy impression yesterday. So yeah, that's on Brock, but also it's on Kyle. Like, why does your coaching have this effect on quarterbacks over time?
I think it's really the defenses that he's facing. Kyle struggles with. His players struggle with beating man. And Brock is also wanting to do a little too much instead of taking the easy play. Like if you go watch the all 22 yesterday, out of those 6 sacks, I would say 5 had an easy check down wide open. And he chose to not go that route. And I don't know if it's because it's his contract year. He feels like I got to do the most. I got to be improved. I got to be better. Let me put this team on my back and make an amazing play when sometimes you just need to make the simple, easy play. I mean, Patrick Mahomes got through his entire last season like that. So, Brock, I'm sorry if I called you a dink and dunker. I take it back. I didn't mean it. But now I need you to do a little dink and dunking because it's open. So take what's there.
Fair, but in addition, on a lot of those plays, he takes a sack and there's a guy open in front of him, but also in front of the sticks. So it's like last year, and really since Brock started playing, there were guys wide open all over the field. And the issue with Jimmy is like he didn't seem to be seeing them, or he was passing up throws because he wasn't confident that he could make them. And if you give a wide open guy downfield to Brock, at least the last couple of years, like he's gonna find him, he's gonna hit him. And in this game, it felt like, yeah, maybe there were like some checkdowns he missed, but the throws he was hitting were very contested. And it seemed like there wasn't as much separation or wide open guys as there had been in the past. And that's not a Brock issue. That's bigger than Brock. And I know maybe it's all because Christian's gone, but it's like still you have a running back giving you 5 yards a carry. You have all this money invested into other receivers. It seems like there shouldn't be this kind of a drop off.
It feels like to me when you have when you have Christian McCaffrey on your team, when you have Grant on your team, when you have Christian McCaffrey on your team,
physical presence.
It's presence there. Like you like if you're a young quarterback and you have Christian McCaffrey on your team, you're going to look for him first. And usually the routes that Christian McCaffrey is running are the easy choice dump off routes that bail you out of tight situations. So when you're under this pressure, you automatically, your first look is who? It's Christian, which is an easy dump off, right? Now he's not there. And now your go-to is probably who? Deebo Samuel, right? So now your first look, your first instinct is to go to the guy who can't get separation. And I think that's a huge part of this.
I do feel like while Christian was never the go-to guy in the Niners passing game, opponents treated him that way. Everything was about, I can't let Christian beat us as a receiver. It's like his 8 yards a catch probably aren't going to beat you. If you overreact to him in the flat, Ayuk is going to kill you because he's going to catch the ball 15, 20 yards down the field, and he's going to kill you. And I think now that defenses can't I think Kansas City figured it out. I think certain teams figured it out, like play man, and you're going to get burned a few times by Christian McCaffrey in the passing game, but not enough to kill you. He'll have some chunk plays, but he's not going to have any house calls as a receiver. So don't overreact to that. Like Deebo will have a house call as a receiver. Ayuk could have a house call as a receiver. Those are big, big freaking plays. You don't have to overcommit to stopping a check down. And now the defenses aren't. We're seeing that Brandon Ayuk might not be worth $30 million a year.
Brock is living in the intermediate. He's living in the middle, between 10 and 19 yards.
10 to 20.
Right?
Yeah, 11.
10,
yep.
11 to 20 yards. That's where he's living. And he needs to take advantage of his dump offs. Doesn't need to be intermediate every time. And he's also not going, I think he's 3 for 9 over 20, 0 for 1 over 25. So he's not going deep. He's not dumping off as much as he's used to dumping off with Christian McCaffrey. He's living in the middle of the field mostly and in the intermediate mostly, between 10 and 20 yards. And I just think he needs to rely more on his checkdowns. Take the easy play, because there are a lot of, on 5 of those 6 sacks last night, there were guys open in the dump off.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to see him do more of that, as well as extend the field. Throw the ball downfield once. In 2 games, he hasn't thrown past 25 yards once, and he's only thrown past 20.
If you go back, though, and watch those those clips of the 6 sacks, if he had taken those checkdowns, do the Niners score more points in this game? Do they extend more drives? Or does, the sack numbers look better? But yes, those sacks are on him, but the overall offensive efficiency is also on him. But I also think it's like super complex, and that's why I like football. There's so many variables. Yeah. And I got a big one I want to talk about in a second that I've been purposely not mentioning yet. Just a second. How much money for you and Lombardi to do a show? I offered to do one with him. He doesn't want to, so you got to talk to him. You skipped my $9.99 chat. My bad. Hard time believing Denise isn't happy when they're making bank from higher ticket sales, jersey sales, etc., while the Niners are a top team versus not. Doesn't pass the BS test to me. I guess we'll see. I don't know.
I mean, you got to also consider they own a soccer team that is struggling right now as well. I mean, it's more than the 49ers for these guys. They have a lot of financial responsibilities, and they're struggling on the soccer side of things.
Yeah, that Leeds team isn't good, and they made a big investment. They're the sole owners of that team. I mean, and they're gonna be lucrative and profitable once they're in the Premier League, but they're not. They're in the league below, the Championship League, and to get into the Premier League, they're going to need to sign new players, which is going to be hard for them to do because they keep spending money to keep players on the 49ers.
Can we, unless you have something planned, I want to talk to you about the worth. Is it worth it? This is a good
We are going to get that. We are absolutely going to get to that. Don't worry. Just a second. Loco Ant says pass game is all slants and in routes. We're going to talk about that in a second. Anthony C. BP is not a high volume thrower. His pass attempts need to be in the 25-ish range and let his legs and running backs do the rest. I agree. I think when he gets in the high volume stuff, then you start to see the interceptions pop up. I agree. Yeah. And if you're making $60 million a year, you have to be able to be a high volume thrower. Like even Goff has had games where he's won throwing 55 times, and he's not great.
Yeah.
How about them preseason INTs, says Matt McEwen? How about them? Guess they were prescient. Noop says 9-8. Sorry. Oh. MGM Productions with a Z says it's time for Juice to step up and be RB2 and take over as main pass down back. He has better hands, blocks, and routes than JP, right? Right. I do think he's a better receiver than Jay. That's a fair point.